Dear students, good morning. Welcome to Law Excellence IAS. Let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, 28 September 2020. The first article for discussion today is Growth Compulsions Fiscal Arithmetic. You know that Indian GDP growth contracted by 23% in the first quarter of this year. And there are various other estimates which state that Indian GDP is expected to contract as a whole in this fiscal year by 5% to 10%. Now, RBI has estimated that around 5%. If you go to Goldman Sachs, it is estimated that at 10%. But one thing for sure is Indian sectors are expected to contract and GDP is going to reflect that. In these circumstances, public administration, defense, and various other services like health are expected to expand. Surprisingly, these sectors also showed contraction. It means it is going to be a very bad year for Indian industry and also to governments in India. Let us see the story of the governments over here. The revenues of the government, tax revenues and non tax revenues, are expected to decline. When they are declined, obviously the welfare programs, capital expenditure of the government is expected to cut down. This further kills the demand in the economy. The killing of demand in the economy will shrink the GDP further. We may enter into a vicious cycle. So, as tax revenues and non tax revenues of the government decline, the fiscal deficit is bound to increase. Here, the states and centers fiscal deficit put together is expected to be around 14%. Previously, fiscal deficit was monetized by RBI. More or less, it was an automatic process. Now, RBI is not doing that. So, the government has to go and find various sources to fill the fiscal deficit. Can government sit idle not spending the money? In this crisis situation, government has to spend the money. Not making an expenditure is not the option for the government. What is the best way forward for the government is to ensure fiscal expenditure and finding the ways to meet this fiscal expenditure. That is what is the essence of this article. Where is the sentinel guarding our rights? In your mains answer writing related to Supreme Court or judiciary, you can use these points. Where the legitimacy of judiciary comes from. You know, judiciary is not an elected body, but it is able to question the elected body like parliament and decisions of the parliament. So, the legitimacy for judiciary comes from constitutional reasoning. In this case, impartiality, trust of the people, integrity of the institution, and honesty of the people, that is, judges sitting in the institution, everything matters for its legitimacy. So, what judges does is very important to us in this context. Here, article explains that judges are not behaving with reason, and various decisions taken by the judges is actually pulling down the integrity of the institution itself. He exposes various cases which have brought the Supreme Court in a bad light over here. One is master of the roster issue. You know, four senior most judges who are in line for CJI after CJI. These people have come into open and questioned the master of the roster system. And CJI being the master of the roster, he is selectively allocating the cases to the judges who are favorable to the executive, was the allegation made. And the next is a judge who has given adversarial judgment against the Home Minister. He died in some circumstances or suspicious circumstances, and Supreme Court did not order any inquiry against it. Obviously, Supreme Court failed to reassure the subordinate judiciary against the executive. And finally, if you talk about Article 370, rights of people for internet in Kashmir, various habeas corpus petitions which are pending before the Supreme Court is not taking any view on them and they are pending before the benches for years together. In this context, is Supreme Court sitting for protection of our rights? Is the highest body to protect our rights or not? That is what the author is questioning over here. So you cannot be so critical about the institution in your answer, but you can quote this master of the roster and delay in Article 370 these points as an example to talk about or to critically analyze the institution of Supreme Court as an institution of democracy. The next article for discussion is Diagnosing What Ails Medical Education. Here we need to understand few words: access, equity, quality, holistic learning. Access means making the education available in various geographies. And then equity means making the education available to all the people irrespective of socio-economic barriers. Quality means education of highest standards. Holistic learning means integrating the medical knowledge with the social, liberal, other aspects of life. So, when national education policy was made, the objective of medical education, it was stated to improve equity and also quality. In India today, with rise in private medical colleges, these two appears to be a trade-off. If the quality is raised, medical colleges are raising the fees. When the fees is raised, equity is getting hurt. In this context, the NEET is also unable to correct this particular problem. Then what is the way forward? If medical education is promoted by the government, obviously the cost of education will be less. It serves the purpose of equity, and then the government also can ensure quality for a larger good, because the doctor who comes at a lesser cost tries to provide the treatment at a lesser cost. That is the assumption over here. In a socialistic line of thought, let us take Cuba's example. The cost of healthcare there is very low because the cost of education is almost zero over there. Based on that assumption, it is been spoken about. The next is battle for Bihar. The elections in Bihar are notorious for few reasons this year. One, in the midst of COVID-19 crisis, these elections are happening. And second, these elections in within 30 years for the first time, Lalu Prasad as though is not the lead campaigner for Janata Dal, RJD, sorry, Rashtriya Janata Dal. In this case, Mr. Nitish Kumar always spoke about good governance in the previous elections. Now he has taken an emotive concept of Bihari pride, and Mr. Sushant Singh Rajput's murder or death, whatever it is, issue has become a larger emotive issue to mobilize the people. And second, the worst part of Indian elections are this: rather than guided by rational choice, they are more guided by emotive rhetoric. Second part, Bihar is a poor state in India. Largest migrant population comes from Bihar. The reverse migration happened due to COVID-19, and government's failure in this reverse migration was clearly visible. In this context, how the voters will decide in these elections is a major lesson for all of us. Salutary lesson. This is about Vodafone case. India has signed bilateral investment treaties with various countries. One such country is Netherlands. Vodafone and Hutchinson, these two companies are outside India. They made a deal where Vodafone thought of buying Hutchinson. And finally, tax authorities, imposed 20,000 crore rupees tax on the Vodafone, and to that extent, government also passed a law retrospectively. This matter went to Supreme Court, High Court, Bombay High Court, and everywhere Vodafone got a favorable judgment. And tax authorities still they are hell bent for Vodafone to pay those taxes. Then the matter went into international arbitration. In this case, arbitration court has clearly stated that the government of India has to pay for it. So here at least government shall stop exploring other avenues further. It is waste of money. If investment treaties are not respected, this ultimately send a wrong message to the investors. India needs foreign investments badly because of the existing situation. Let us not send any wrong message. Again, this Vodafone deal can also be explained or quoted in your answer as an example why foreign direct investments are apprehensive on coming to India. The next is the benefits of carbon tax. What is meant by carbon tax? Any vehicle or pollution or any vehicle emitting carbon or thermal power emitting carbon, everything has to be taxed. Let us take, if I am using electricity coming from a thermal power station, I shall be taxed, which is called carbon tax. You know, China has recently announced that it aims to become carbon neutral by 2060. Obviously, the second largest emitter is USA, followed by India. The pressure is now on these two countries. In this context, Sweden and then, if I'm not wrong, Canada, these have imposed the carbon tax. It helped two ways. One, it raised the revenues of the government. Second thing is, it has disincentivized the carbon centric life modality and incentivized carbon free or low carbon lifestyle. So, India can take up these examples to move forward. India is still far from herd immunity, says Vardhan. What is herd immunity? If every one of us possess antibodies against COVID, automatically we are all saved. So if we all get infected at once and develop immunity against the virus, then these antibodies which are there in the community will collectively protect all of us against that virus in future. This is what we call it as herd immunity. In India, we are far from this herd immunity. So we shall not be in a misconception that we might be infected at some time, so I can be free from COVID behavior. No. So please continue the COVID-19 behavior. And second thing, we are rampantly using antiviral drugs, that is remdesivir, Famiflu, that is the trade name, and plasma therapy. So this use is unwarranted. Use these medicines cautiously. This is what Mr. Harshavardhan says. These are the news for today. Thank you very much. Have a great day.